She tugged my shirt and whispered, "Close the door." In that moment, everything changed. The story begins with the male narrator noticing her in an ordinary, almost mundane setting, perhaps in the apartment hallway, retrieving her mail, or stepping out onto the balcony. She's in her early 40s, poised and graceful, moving with a quiet confidence that draws his attention without demanding it. The moment is fleeting, almost accidental, yet it leaves a lingering impression that he can't shake. The audience should feel that magnetism instantly. He notices the subtle tilt of her head, the soft fall of her hair over her shoulder, the faint sound of her laughter carried through the air. As he passes her in the hallway, their eyes meet for the briefest second. He feels the warmth of her gaze, not bold or overbearing, but quietly curious and inviting. There's a hint of a smile at the corner of her lips, as if she recognizes a shared rhythm in the silence between them. For him, it's not just attraction, it's a spark of human connection that feels surprisingly profound for a chance encounter. The male narrator, being emotionally observant, begins to notice the small details that most would overlook. The gentle rise and fall of her shoulders as she exhales, the subtle perfume lingering in the air as she moves past, the light brush of her hand against the railing or mailbox. These sensations are etched into his memory. The audience should feel these moments through him, as if they are sharing his heightened awareness. There's also a quiet contrast in their life experiences. He's in his early 20s, still discovering the depth of human emotion and the layers of relationships. She, in her 40s, carries a calmness born from lived experience, a softness wrapped in quiet strength. This difference doesn't create a barrier. Instead, it adds texture to their interaction. The narrator is drawn not just to her physical presence but to the subtle confidence in the way she carries herself, the way her eyes seem to hold stories he's curious to uncover. The emotional tension in this first keynote is subtle and internal. He's unsure why a simple hallway encounter leaves him unsettled in a good way. He's aware of a gentle pull toward her, a curiosity that teases his mind and heart. He notices how he anticipates seeing her again, how ordinary moments, checking the mailbox, stepping out onto the balcony, begin to hold the promise of a fleeting connection. For the audience, this is the beginning of the slow burn. The spark is lit, but nothing is rushed. Sensory richness is key here. The script should emphasize the textures and sounds around them, the soft click of the elevator, the slight echo of footsteps in the hallway, the warmth of sunlight spilling through the windows onto her hair, and the almost imperceptible brush of their clothing as they pass. Each tiny detail builds intimacy and draws viewers into the narrator's perspective. By the end of Keynote 1, the stage is set. The audience understands that this encounter is simple, almost ordinary, but brimming with emotional potential. They sense that this quiet connection could evolve into something deeper, something unexpected, and they are hooked to see how it unfolds. The first meaningful touch happens unexpectedly, in a space that feels private yet ordinary, maybe the threshold of his apartment, or in the hallway just outside her door. It's an everyday setting, but the simplicity of the moment makes it extraordinary. She reaches out and tugs his shirt, a small, almost playful motion, and the narrator feels a jolt of awareness. This isn't just a casual interaction. Her fingers press lightly against the fabric, a touch that's deliberate yet gentle, communicating authority and familiarity simultaneously. The male narrator notices everything. The warmth of her hand as it brushes his chest, the soft friction of her fingertips against the cotton of his shirt, the faint pressure that sends an unexpected thrill through him. His heart beats a little faster, not from desire alone, but from the intimacy embedded in such a simple act. There is trust and closeness in her gesture. She's letting him into her personal space, even briefly, and he feels the quiet intensity of it. Her voice follows, soft and slightly hushed. Close the door. It's not a command, it's a shared secret, a moment of connection meant only for them. The narrator leans in slightly, almost instinctively, feeling the subtle warmth of her presence radiating through the small distance between them. The faint scent of her perfume lingers in the air, subtle yet unforgettable, blending with the soft hum of the apartment around them. This moment is layered with tension and curiosity. The narrator is aware of the age difference, not as a barrier, but as a contrast that makes her confidence and experience even more captivating. She moves with an ease he envies, her gestures refined and natural, each one telling him more about her than words could. He notices how her eyes linger on his for a heartbeat longer than necessary, a small flicker of emotion that feels like an unspoken question. Physically, the contact is fleeting but electric. Her fingers slip from his shirt, but the memory of the warmth remains, a phantom touch that makes him acutely aware of his own body. He notices the rhythm of her breathing, the soft tilt of her head, the way her lips curve slightly as she waits for him to act. Every detail is magnified, the ordinary transformed into something intimate and emotionally charged. Emotionally, the narrator experiences a mix of exhilaration and hesitation. He feels drawn to her in a way he doesn't fully understand yet, captivated by the balance of her confidence and vulnerability. He's aware of the social tension that could accompany their closeness, yet he also senses the authenticity of the moment. They are simply two people sharing a small, meaningful connection. For the audience, this is a key slow burn moment, a non-sexual touch that communicates attraction, trust, and curiosity. The storytelling should linger on sensory details, the soft tug, the pressure of her fingers, the subtle warmth of proximity, the sound of her voice, the faint scent of her perfume. These elements immerse viewers in the emotional gravity of the encounter without crossing YouTube boundaries. By the end of Keynote 2, the audience should feel the spark of intimacy, the first real tension between them, and a sense that this small, ordinary gesture has shifted the narrative. The stage is set for emotional and physical closeness to grow naturally, building the slow burn tension that will carry the story forward. After that first, unexpected touch, their interactions begin to feel more natural, more grounded, yet charged with subtle tension. The narrator starts noticing her presence in everyday situations, a casual visit to borrow sugar, helping her carry groceries, or exchanging quiet greetings at the apartment entrance. These ordinary moments carry an extraordinary weight now because of the memory of her touch, the echo of her soft voice, and the quiet way she seems aware of his attention. The male narrator becomes increasingly attuned to her habits and mannerisms. He notices the gentle precision in the way she folds the edge of a grocery bag, the slight furrow of her brow when she's thinking, the quiet laugh that rises from her chest when something strikes her as amusing. There's an elegance to her movements, a calm confidence that contrasts with his own restless energy, making him aware of her presence in a way that feels grounding. Physical proximity is emphasized in subtle, meaningful ways. A hand brushes his shoulder as she reaches for something, fingers grazing lightly in a shared task. Sometimes their arms overlap while arranging items on a counter or sorting laundry, and the fleeting warmth of her touch lingers longer than expected. Each contact is brief but intentional, leaving the narrator both aware of and drawn to the sensation, sparking an inner dialogue of curiosity and desire tempered with restraint. Emotional intimacy also deepens in these shared moments. They talk quietly about their days, exchanging small confidences, his nervousness about work or life transitions, her reflections on past experiences and the lessons learned over time. Her voice has a soothing cadence, and her eyes convey empathy without judgment, allowing the narrator to lower his defenses. These conversations, though ordinary in content, feel extraordinary in effect because they create a safe space where mutual understanding grows. The narrative should linger on sensory details to immerse the audience fully. The warmth of sunlight spilling across her hair as they stand by the window, the soft brush of her sleeve against his arm, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the aroma of coffee or fresh bread. Every touch, glance, and gesture becomes a thread weaving them closer, creating intimacy without crossing any boundaries. At the same time, subtle romantic tension simmers beneath the surface. The narrator notices her hesitation in certain situations, how she sometimes pauses before touching, or how her eyes momentarily flicker away when caught looking at him. These moments make him aware of the unspoken understanding developing between them, a mix of curiosity, longing, and caution. The audience should feel the magnetic pull of this slow-burn romance, sensing that their connection is growing stronger even in the smallest, most mundane interactions. By the end of Keynote 3, the audience understands that the story is no longer just about chance encounters. Their shared moments at home have established a pattern of closeness, emotional resonance, and tender physical gestures. The slow burn tension is deepening naturally, setting the stage for the next phase, more intimate conversations and moments where vulnerability and desire quietly rise to the surface. The story takes a deliberate pause in ordinary busyness to focus on moments that allow their emotional connection to deepen. It's a quiet late afternoon, the sun casting a warm golden glow through the windows. The narrator and the neighbor's daughter find themselves sitting together, perhaps on a small balcony, a narrow hallway bench, or across from each other in the living room with the faint hum of a distant city outside. The air feels calm, intimate, and suspended, a perfect space for vulnerability to emerge. Their conversation begins lightly, touching on everyday topics, work, errands, or the small oddities of daily life. But gradually, the dialogue turns inward, exploring personal reflections, regrets, and the subtler textures of experience. She speaks about challenges she has faced, her voice soft but steady, carrying hints of weariness and quiet resilience. The narrator listens, attuned not just to her words but to the way she speaks, the slight pause before a confession, the careful inflection that betrays a deeper emotion. Physical proximity in these moments is subtle but meaningful. Their shoulders brush lightly when shifting slightly on the bench. A hand occasionally rests near the others on the table, a small space charged with unspoken understanding. When he gestures to emphasize a point, she instinctively leans in, her hand lightly grazing his as she reaches for her coffee mug. These tiny touches linger in memory, resonating more deeply than words, communicating trust, curiosity, and a gentle intimacy that draws the audience in. The narrator becomes increasingly aware of the quiet contrasts between them, the fluidity of her movements compared to his slight awkwardness, the calm steadiness of her gaze versus his restless observations. He notices how her laughter can be warm and light, yet tinged with a reflective quality, as if she's sharing a small piece of herself without fully revealing it. The audience should feel this magnetic tension, a slow burn of curiosity, admiration, and emotional connection growing stronger with each shared moment. Sensory details heighten the immersion. The scent of her perfume mingles with the faint aroma of coffee. Sunlight warms her cheek as she turns toward him while speaking. The subtle shift of her weight, or the delicate brush of hair from her face creates an almost electric awareness of her presence. These sensory notes anchor the emotional weight of the scene, making the audience feel the intimacy in a YouTube-safe, tender way. At the same time, hesitation underlines their interaction. She pauses before answering certain questions, her eyes briefly flicking downward or away, signaling an awareness of boundaries. The narrator senses this restraint and is equally careful, navigating the closeness with respect and attentiveness. Their connection is emotional first, tender, respectful, and deeply human, creating anticipation for how it might evolve without rushing toward physical intimacy. By the end of Keynote 4, viewers should feel a palpable emotional resonance between them. The late afternoon conversation has allowed both characters to reveal small, personal truths while enjoying shared comfort. Their quiet glances, light touches, and attentive listening establish a deeper level of intimacy, and the story's slow burn tension intensifies. The audience senses that the bond is growing stronger, and the stage is set for the next phase, a moment of hesitation or misunderstanding that challenges but ultimately strengthens their connection. Every story of slow burn romance benefits from a moment of pause, where internal conflict and external circumstances test the growing bond between the characters. For the male narrator and the neighbor's daughter, this comes in the form of a subtle, ordinary situation that carries unexpected emotional weight. Perhaps they are walking together through the hallway when a friend or neighbor unexpectedly passes by, or maybe she hesitates at the doorway, the small tug of her hand lingering longer than usual. The narrator senses the shift immediately. Her slight stiffening, the gentle pulling away, and the brief downward glance convey a mix of awareness and caution. It's a quiet, almost imperceptible signal that she is conscious of social perception, propriety, and the unspoken boundaries between them. For the audience, this moment introduces tension, not through words, but through body language, glances, and the nuanced interplay of emotions. Physically, this hesitation creates a charged space. The narrator notices the fleeting warmth as their hands brush or their shoulders touch, now accompanied by a subtle pause that amplifies the emotional intensity. The tactile memory of previous touches, the tug of her shirt, the brush of her hand, makes this distance feel heavier, more significant. He's acutely aware of the contrast between the comfort of closeness and the restraint imposed by circumstance, and the audience feels the slow-burn tension in every small movement. Emotionally, the male narrator experiences a blend of curiosity, frustration, and empathy. He understands her caution, yet the pause leaves him questioning what he might have done to cause her restraint, or what unspoken rules she is navigating. His inner monologue can explore the delicate balance between desire and respect, highlighting his sincerity and attentiveness. At the same time, he recognizes that these fleeting hesitations carry an intimate honesty. They reveal her awareness of their connection and her own vulnerability without needing to voice it. The neighbor's daughter is equally nuanced in this moment. The audience can see the subtle conflict in her eyes, a longing to bridge the gap, an awareness of the social implications, and a quiet fear of overstepping. Her movements are careful but expressive, a hand that lingers near his for a heartbeat longer than necessary, a sigh that carries more meaning than words, a glance that speaks of curiosity restrained by propriety. These cues communicate emotional depth while keeping the interaction YouTube safe and tender. Sensory details anchor the scene, the faint warmth of their proximity, the soft echo of footsteps in the hallway, the brush of her hair as she shifts her position, the gentle hum of ambient noise outside. Each element heightens the intimacy of the moment, allowing the audience to feel the slow-burn tension without explicit physicality. By the end of Keynote 5, the story has reached a peak of emotional anticipation. Hesitation has introduced conflict, not in words, but in gesture and glance, testing the trust, restraint, and patience of both characters. This pause creates a necessary build-up, preparing the audience for the next stage: quiet confession, vulnerability, and acknowledgement of mutual feelings in a moment that is emotionally powerful, tender, and meaningful. Even in the quiet rhythm of their developing connection, there comes a moment when the narrator and the neighbor's daughter both feel the weight of uncertainty. It happens in an ordinary setting, a hallway, a shared living space, or perhaps at her doorway after a small errand together, but the simplicity of the scene makes the emotional tension sharper. A friend or neighbor passing by, an unexpected knock at the door, or even a glance at the clock creates a subtle barrier, and both characters instinctively pull back just enough to notice the space between them. The male narrator senses it immediately. He notices the almost imperceptible stiffening of her posture, the pause in her step, the faint downward shift of her gaze. The tug of her hand earlier, which had carried warmth and invitation, now feels fleeting in memory, as if both of them are suddenly conscious of the social distance between them. His mind races, observing her hesitation but also respecting it. He understands, at some level, that she's carefully navigating propriety, awareness, and self-restraint. Physically, this tension is subtle yet electric. Their shoulders brush briefly, or their hands linger near each other for just a heartbeat longer than socially necessary, before retreating. The narrator feels a pang of longing at the absence of contact, a reminder of how deeply the earlier moments had affected him. Each tiny gesture, the soft sway of her hair as she adjusts, the gentle exhale as she straightens, carries weight. For the audience, these delicate touches communicate desire and restraint without ever needing words. Emotionally, the moment is a study in contrast. The narrator is caught between curiosity, longing, and caution. He wants to bridge the gap, to acknowledge the magnetic pull that draws them together, yet he feels a deep respect for her boundaries. At the same time, the neighbor's daughter is wrestling with her own internal conflict. Her eyes reflect hesitation, the desire to reach out, and the awareness that she must hold back. Every subtle movement, her hand brushing against a surface instead of his, the slight pause before speaking, communicates the silent negotiation taking place. Sensory details heighten the intimacy and tension of this scene. The warmth lingering from her proximity feels almost tangible, the faint scent of her perfume still in the air. The quiet hum of the hallway, the muted echo of footsteps, and the soft, golden light spilling through a nearby window create a cocooned, private atmosphere. Even small sounds, the shift of her chair, the rustle of her sleeve, seem amplified, emphasizing the gravity of restraint in a moment that is otherwise ordinary. By the end of this keynote, the slow burn tension has reached a peak. Hesitation becomes a catalyst, highlighting both the emotional stakes and the depth of connection between the characters. The audience feels the longing, the curiosity, and the unspoken desire that has been building, while also understanding that restraint and patience are shaping the bond in meaningful ways. This moment sets the stage perfectly for the next narrative step, a quiet confession, subtle gestures of vulnerability, and the acknowledgement of mutual attraction that feels natural, respectful, and emotionally resonant. After the moment of hesitation, the emotional tension between the male narrator and the neighbor's daughter finds a gentle release in a quiet, intimate conversation. It happens in a setting that feels private yet natural, perhaps sitting side by side on the balcony as the sun dips low, or sharing a cup of tea near a softly lit window. The world around them fades slightly, leaving only the warmth of shared space, the subtle movements of bodies near each other, and the unspoken emotions that hang in the air. The male narrator begins to speak, not with grand declarations, but with simple honesty. He mentions the way her presence has affected him, the calmness she brings, the way he notices details in life he might have ignored before. His voice is soft, thoughtful, carrying a vulnerability that feels new to him. The audience senses the sincerity in every pause, in every careful word chosen, and understands that this is not just attraction, it is recognition of a meaningful, emotional connection. She responds not with a dramatic confession, but through small, deliberate gestures and the quiet weight of her eyes. A fleeting glance lingers just a moment too long, a hand rests lightly near his on the table, or she tilts her head as she speaks, letting him see the quiet vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. Her acknowledgement is tender, understated, and deeply human, revealing her own curiosity and affection without needing explicit statements. Physicality remains subtle yet emotionally powerful. Their hands may brush accidentally when reaching for the same object, a shoulder might graze lightly as they shift positions, or their knees touch briefly under the table. These moments are fleeting, almost accidental, but each is charged with meaning, emphasizing emotional intimacy over physical desire. The narrator feels the warmth of her presence, the rhythm of her breathing, and the comfort of her attention. It is in these small, sensory-rich interactions that the depth of their connection becomes palpable to the audience. The emotional complexity in this keynote is critical. Both characters are navigating curiosity, affection, and the societal implications of their age difference. She carries the wisdom of experience tempered with caution, while he brings the openness and intensity of youth. Their dialogue allows these contrasts to surface naturally, creating a rich texture of understanding, respect, and subtle romantic tension. The audience senses the mutual admiration, the restrained longing, and the trust that has been carefully cultivated over previous interactions. Sensory details enhance the immersion, the faint scent of her perfume mixing with the evening air, the warmth of sunlight softening her features, the slight brush of hair against her cheek as she leans forward to speak, and the comforting rhythm of her breathing nearby. These elements anchor the moment in the physical world, making the quiet confession feel immediate, tender, and relatable. By the end of Keynote 6, the slow burn tension finds its emotional high point. Both characters have acknowledged, in their own gentle ways, that there is a bond growing between them. They have admitted curiosity, admiration, and subtle desire, creating an atmosphere of intimacy that is sincere, respectful, and deeply human. This sets the stage for Keynote 7, the warm, satisfying resolution where gestures of affection and routine closeness establish their relationship as emotionally complete and fulfilling, without needing overt drama or sensationalism. After the quiet confession, the story shifts into a space of gentle resolution, where the emotional tension built over previous encounters finds warmth and reassurance. The male narrator and the neighbor's daughter are now attuned to each other's presence in a way that feels both natural and deeply satisfying. Their relationship is no longer tentative. It has moved from curiosity and restraint to mutual understanding and trust. The scene is calm and intimate, grounded in everyday life. Perhaps they sit together on the balcony at dusk, watching the city lights flicker on, or share a cup of coffee in the quiet of the kitchen. The setting reinforces the human, relatable nature of their bond. The focus is on shared experience and the comfort of being near one another, rather than grand gestures. Their closeness feels effortless, built on the small, tender touches and glances that have been cultivated over time. Physical affection is subtle but meaningful. A hand rests slightly near the others on the table. Shoulders brush as they lean slightly closer in conversation. Fingers occasionally meet while passing a small object. Each touch carries a gentle warmth, a reminder of the trust and emotional intimacy they have developed. The narrator is keenly aware of these moments, savoring the quiet intensity of closeness without needing to rush or escalate it. For the audience, these gestures communicate deep affection, tenderness, and emotional connection, remaining entirely YouTube safe. Emotionally, both characters exhibit a balance of vulnerability and confidence. She demonstrates trust through her calm presence and attentiveness, while he shows care through his observant, gentle reactions. They engage in light, playful conversation, laughter spilling naturally as they share anecdotes or tease each other softly. These moments underscore the authenticity of their bond. This is a relationship built on respect, shared understanding, and a growing sense of belonging. The narrative also emphasizes sensory richness. The warmth of her hand near his, the faint fragrance of her perfume lingering in the air, the soft glow of sunset illuminating her features, the subtle brush of hair as she tucks a strand behind her ear. All these details heighten the intimacy and make the moment feel tangible. Even the small ambient sounds, the distant hum of traffic, the creak of the balcony railing, the quiet rustle of clothing, anchor the emotional reality of the scene. By the end of Keynote 7, the audience feels the story's emotional arc come full circle. The initial curiosity, the spark of connection, the moments of hesitation, and the tender confessions have all led to a natural, satisfying resolution. The relationship is established as warm, human, and deeply intimate in an emotionally fulfilling way. The age difference is acknowledged subtly through life experience, confidence, and perspective, but it no longer creates tension. Rather, it adds depth and texture to their connection. The story closes on a note of gentle contentment. The narrator and the neighbor's daughter are comfortable, affectionate, and emotionally aligned. Their small gestures, leaning close in conversation, sharing a laugh, brushing shoulders, signal a relationship built on trust, mutual respect, and heartfelt connection. The slow burn romance has reached its culmination, leaving the audience with a warm, satisfying sense of closure, while the subtle, sensory-rich details ensure the story remains immersive and relatable for a YouTube audience.